For the first time in 2025, NC State is coming off a loss. Hi, everyone. Noah Fleischman here, host of the Wolfpacker Show, presented by the Wolfpacker.com, which is a part of the On3 network. Sign up today for $1 for your first week. Everything you need to know about NC State over on the site right now. The Wolfpack are set to host Virginia Tech on Saturday night at Carter Finley Stadium. 7 o'clock kickoff on the CW. And the Pack is looking to rebound after its loss at Duke last week. And the Pack has had about a week to stew on that, fix the mistakes, a lot on special teams, and get right against the Hokies, who are coming off their first win, a 38-6 victory over Wofford. But before we dive into today's podcast, let's give a special thanks to our sponsors and friends over at BetMGM. As you know, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, including today, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. When you join BetMGM, you get access to a variety of parlay selection features like same-game parlays, live betting options, and more. If you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3, that's ON3, and you will get up to $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here is how it works. Download the app today and sign up using the bonus code ON3. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. And you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code ON3, that's ON the number 3, when you sign up. Make this college football season one for the history books. Make it legendary. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 and over only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the United States. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY to 467-369. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, and 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offers for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements, with rewards or non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3 and get $1,500 first bet offer today. As I said, NC State hosts Virginia Tech. First time the Hokies will be in Raleigh since 2022. And the Wolfpack has a chance to get back on the right way. Virginia Tech fired Brent Pry just under 2 weeks ago, and Philip Montgomery, the former Tulsa head coach, who's the offensive coordinator of Virginia Tech, is filling in as the interim for the last 9 games. The Hokies did get on the board in the win column with a 38-6 win over Wofford last weekend. But to preview Virginia Tech, we're going to be joined by David Cunningham, managing editor of TechSideline.com, one of the best sites in the country covering the Hokies, and he'll be able to break down Virginia Tech, what to expect this weekend, and just the craziness that Virginia Tech has gone through in the last 2 weeks. So, without further ado, let's kick into our conversation with David. Now we're joined by Tech Sideline's David Cunningham. David, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
So, Virginia Tech heads down to Raleigh this weekend. It's first road game of the Philip Montgomery era, at least the 9 games of the era that it will be. David, what have these last 10 days just been like in Blacksburg?
It's been chaotic, man. Hokies obviously fired Brent Pry after going 0-3. First 0-3 start since 1987, which was Frank Beamer's first year at the helm. Long time ago. Neither of us were alive. Um, it's been very rocky, but I thought the response Tech had against Wofford was very good. Granted, it's an FCS team, not a very good one. But I thought the Hokies did a very good job of kind of righting the ship. Phil Montgomery, he's been a head coach before. He was at Tulsa for 8 seasons, was pretty good there. He was formerly an offensive coordinator at Baylor, coach RG3 when he was there. So he has some experience, especially as a head coach. And I think he's done a really good job of gathering the guys, getting them all on the same page, getting them aligned. And the most impressive thing was first time all year last weekend, Tech goes out and plays actual 4 quarters of football. Tech hadn't really done that in the first 3 games. Played okay against South Carolina in that opener, but those games against Vanderbilt and Old Dominion, Tech just fell apart, particularly for about a 4-quarter stretch there at the second half of Vandy and the first half of ODU, where it got outscored 62-0. Like against Vanderbilt and Old Dominion. We're not talking about like ACC teams or SEC, big good SEC teams. Although Vandy might be better than everybody thinks, but yeah, it's been an interesting 10 days. There's a lot going on. Coaching search. Tech has said it's going to go after a general manager, so Tech's hiring a GM too. Um, the AD with Babcock, his job is currently up in the air. So it's a very chaotic time. And I don't know that anybody necessarily sees this football season being a very successful one. Um, but I think in the Hokies' eyes, just finishing out strong. And I mean, that's all you can really do at this point. And it's a long way to go. You got 8 games. It's not like a snap of fingers, boom, you got 2 games to finish out. So it's going to be a weird couple months.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Virginia Tech, as you said, started 0-3 with losses to South Carolina, which wasn't a terrible loss. It wasn't like they got blown out. Got blown out by Vanderbilt, and then Old Dominion came to Blacksburg and kind of ended the Brent Pry era. Overall, what have your first impressions just been of Philip Montgomery? You talked about, he's a former head coach. He's not new to this chair, but overall, what have the impressions of Tech's offensive coordinator?
Yeah, I think he's been done a pretty good job, but the weird part is that he and Kyron Drones different styles a little bit. Like he's a guy who he's always had quarterbacks who pass, pass, pass. And Kyron Drones is more of a running guy. He's fine throwing it, but it's not his kind of go-to, if that makes sense. I thought the best thing you saw from Kyron Drones was this past weekend against Wofford, where Wofford really set everybody back and Kyron was able to check down a lot of stuff. And he was 27 of 32 for 307. And I thought it was his most efficient day as a passer. Now, granted, a lot of that stuff was right to the line of scrimmage or a couple yards in front or a couple yards behind. It wasn't a lot of deep shots downfield, but I thought it gave him a little bit of confidence and got him in a rhythm. Um, I'm interested to see against a better defense, you know, what Phil Montgomery can scheme up against a team that's maybe not even a better defense, against a team that's not going to just sit back and doesn't want to get beat deep. But yeah, it started out a little bit rocky. Kyron Drones has had a bunch of turnovers this year. He had a couple picks in those first couple games. He's fumbled here and there. He fumbled against Wofford in Tech's own territory. Luckily, Wofford didn't really turn that into anything big. But I think the Montgomery Drones relationship super interesting because their skill sets, what they want to do is slightly different. I think it's been okay. And as far as Montgomery as a head coach, I think he stepped in and filled in admirably. And we heard some of the players this week, like Benji Gosnell, the tight end captain, was talking about how great of a job Montgomery has done to kind of steady the ship and be that steady hand because it's not like it's not like you're playing 1 or 2 games and the season's over and everybody just flips over and new season, off season, whatever, transfer portal. It's like you got 9 games to go. That's a lot of time to kind of keep a group together for that long. So I think Montgomery has a lot on his plate right now. He's now back down on the sideline. He was in the booth before, so a little bit of adjustment for himself as well. He's got a lot on his plate, but I thought particularly like Tech had a 2-minute drive right before the half against Wofford, and I thought it was very efficient, more so than the previous coach. So I think he's been pretty good in most of the areas, but obviously still a work in progress.
Definitely. Talk about keeping the team together. Virginia Tech, obviously, 4 games in, guys can redshirt and move on. They've had one guy do it so far. Do you expect a lot of guys not to be on the roster by Saturday, or is it kind of still up in the air?
I think it's still up in the air. There were, I think, 6 or 7 guys in Virginia Tech's defensive two deep that did not play against Wofford. Most of them were there at the game, just not dressed out, or dressed out and just didn't play. There was one, I think, James Yoncom, who wasn't there at all, defensive end. Dante Lovett's the guy you referenced who portaled out. Or put his name in the portal. He was one of Tech's top 3 cornerbacks. So Caleb Brown, Tech's other starting cornerback. He did not play last week. So it's kind of up in the air right now how many of these guys that were out last week will actually play. Like you said, some of these guys have red shirts available. So if they haven't played in 4 games, they could redshirt. The window, I believe, goes until like October 14th. as far as a 30-day window for them to enter the portal. So we're talking 2 or 3 more games where they've got a lot of wiggle room and opportunity to potentially decide, think about their future. But it seems like a pretty cohesive, bought-in group right now. It just seems like there are a couple guys on the outside that are weighing their futures, and who knows? One of the names or two of the big names to keep in mind, Caleb Woodson at linebacker, one of Tech's captains. He's already had some stuff come up this year where, it was questionable whether he was going to play in that South Carolina game because he had a DWI about a week before the season. He didn't play last week. Whether he was serving a suspension or not, we're not really sure. Um, and then Quentin Reddish, one of the Tech's starting safeties, he did not play last week either. So a lot of questions about who's going to play, who's not. Tech didn't put out a depth chart this week for the first time all year. So I think that kind of tells you that Tech is still trying to figure out a lot of things, the coaching staff and whatnot, get the roster straightened out.
Yeah, that first availability report will be interesting to keep an eye on because it's not an injury report, it's just an availability report. So some guys' names could pop on. Maybe it's questionable if they're still deciding. But moving on, we've talked about Kyron Jones a little bit, but he's a guy I think that's been interesting at Tech. He had a really good 2023 season, a not so great 2024, now an up and down 2025. What has the Kyron Jones experience been like, and why has he been so inconsistent just from year to year?
Well, I think he was really good in 2023 once he figured some things out. Once he got in a groove, he took over. He wasn't the starter at the beginning of the year. Finished out the season strong. And I thought he was pretty good at times last year, but the Tech offense took a little bit of time to get going. But he had a 3-game stretch against like Stanford, Miami, and Boston College last year where he was terrific. And then he got banged up and got injured, and he basically missed the entire second half of the season. Um, and then just so much uncertainty. New offensive coordinator coming in this year. Tyler Bowen, the former offensive coordinator, went and took the offensive line job at Ohio State. So Tech had to hire Philip Montgomery, a new offensive coordinator. So there's just a lot of inconsistency around him, I think. And himself, Kyron, I think he's pretty good when he doesn't have to throw the ball, a bunch a game. There's this stat where basically once he hits 30 passes a game, that's when start to get in the danger area of Tech probably doesn't win a game because Tech's more efficient with him at the helm when the running game is moving the ball. And I think it worked really well when you had a guy like Bashal Tutin in the backfield last year, running back. He's currently scoring touchdowns for the Jaguars in the NFL. Tech still has some decent talent at running back, but the run game has been inconsistent. So Kyron kind of leans on that heavily. And I think himself, he's had some moments here and there where he's been able to put the ball down and shoulder the load a little bit and carry the ball himself. And I know he enjoys doing that, but just inconsistencies in his game period, coming off an injury, like it's been up and down. But more than anything, if I think if Virginia Tech could say, hey, we want Kyron Drone to enter ACC play, we want him coming off of one of these 4 performances to begin the year. Which one do we want? It's definitely the Wofford one. I get it, not a great opponent, but it was a confidence building performance where you felt like he was progressing to different reads. It wasn't just like he's staring at one guy the entire time. And I thought that was the best the offense has looked all year. But I'm interested to see against an ACC defense kind of how it translates over.
Definitely. It's been a very eventful week and a half and in Blacksburg. But what's been the biggest surprise this season other than the start to the season and Brent Pry being let go?
Man, that's a good question because it's been very chaotic. 0-3 start, head coach fired. Again, so much going on, coaching search, GM search, potential AD search. Um, I think the biggest surprise, honestly, has been the how bad the defense has been in moments. I thought new defensive coordinator in Sam Seifkes, who came down from the NFL, where he was a linebackers coach for the Arizona Cardinals. He worked with the Vikings for a while. Um, he seems like this very bright, inquisitive mind, kind of a mad scientist guy. And I thought Tech did a very good job in that opener against South Carolina. And I thought the defense just kind of fell flat on its face those next 2 weeks against Vanderbilt and Old Dominion. And I was a little bit surprised. And in kind of to go along with that, it felt like some of the players quit a little bit. in that Old Dominion game, particularly in the first half. You go down 21, 28-7, essentially. You get into a 3-4 score hole, and it's like you could just tell the body language on the guys' faces. Um, you could just tell that they quit a little bit. Same thing at the end of that second half against Vanderbilt, where they got outscored like 34-0. Um, just kind of demoralizing those 2 weeks there. Um, but I will say, I think it's been a positive that Phil Montgomery and the leadership on this team have been able to rally around. Um, and as far as the defense goes, I thought that was a good confidence building performance last week too. Tech held Wofford to -1 rushing yards. Granted, it's a terrible offense, but anytime you can kind of get in the backfield, make some plays, 12 tackles for loss. Um, I think that group potentially decides the game on Saturday in Raleigh, just because I think there are some playmakers up around on Tech's defense, particularly up front. If those guys can get in the backfield and maybe disrupt CJ Bailey a little bit, make some plays, I think Tech has a chance. But it's going to take the defense to step up. And you get into a shootout, and it's going to be a really tough game.
Yeah, it leads into the last question I had was, what does Tech need to do to win? Tech hasn't played an ACC team yet. NC State has played three of them. So I guess, one team is a little more prepared, I guess, for league play. But other than the defense, making CJ Bailey uncomfortable in the pocket, is there anything else you think the Hokies really need to do to be able to come out with the win?
I think take advantage of like the small margins. Like, if Tech has a really good punt return, Tucker Holloway hasn't been able to really get him going at all because he's fair caught like all but like 3 punts this year. Um, you get a guy like him going unleashed. I mean, that could be a big play waiting to happen. He's returned punts for a touchdown before. Offensively, I think Tech's got to take care of the ball and stay on schedule a little bit. Kyron Jones fumbled again last week. Didn't throw an interception, but he fumbled against Old Dominion the week before inside the 10-yard line. You got to take care of the football, and you got to kind of find a rhythm early. Too many times, I thought in those first couple games of the year, they had to punt early, and it just gave the other team an opportunity to kind of pin their ears back and go. You'd get behind the chains. And then defensively, they got to get pressure. Like I said, I think it's not going to be one thing. It's going to be a lot of different things. And NC State obviously has the advantage. I would be surprised a little bit if Tech won, but I don't think it's out of the question. The last time Hokies and Wolfpack played in Raleigh was in 2022, Brent Pry's first season, and it was a wild game where all of Tech's 21 points were scored in 1 quarter. So it's like one of those things where you go down to that stadium, Carter Finley, and it's like who knows really what's going to happen between these two teams.
The winning quarterback that day was MJ Morris, for those interested, who is now on his third school since then and has been benched at Coastal Carolina. So a long time ago, but it is what it is. David, before we get out of here, where can people find your work going into the game?
Yeah, appreciate it. Go to techsideline.com. We cover all things Virginia Tech, and we've got a podcast. I know you're coming on our podcast. You can find that, search Tech Sideline Podcast on YouTube or wherever you listen, Apple Music, Spotify. So appreciate you having me on, Noah, and can't wait to see you this weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Can't wait to see you in Raleigh. A rare sight for the Hokies to make their trip south. Appreciate David for hopping on the pod this week. He had a fun time, fun knowledge. It was a good time. Always good to hang out with David Cunningham. He'll be in Raleigh on Saturday. NC State and Virginia Tech. Let's pick the game. NC State is a 10.5 point favorite, according to our friends at BetMGM. Does the Wolfpack cover? I think it's close. It's close. It's going to be a high scoring game. It's going to be a high scoring game. I'm going to say they don't cover this spread of 10.5. I think Virginia Tech will come out with a vengeance, want to right the ship against a ACC team. It is their first ACC game of the season in Blacksburg, so I expect them to come out firing. Final score prediction for this game: NC State 35, Virginia Tech 30. It's going to be another high scoring game. The Wolfpack have shown they can score a lot of points, but they also have shown they give up a lot of points on defense. So I think this one will follow the same kind of pathway, but the Wolfpack, more talented team out there, especially with the Hokies, unsure what their roster really will look like going into this weekend. Players jumping in the portal. The latest, Tucker Holloway jumping in on Thursday afternoon. Was more coming? Probably. So we'll keep an eye on that throughout the week. The first availability report drops Thursday night. Will be updated Friday night at 8 p.m. and then updated 2 hours before the kickoff on Saturday, which will be 5 p.m. Eastern Time. The Wolfpack Hokies, 7 o'clock on Saturday. NC State with a chance to get back in the win column at home. Kicking off a two-game homestand, NC State will also host Campbell before going to Notre Dame. That's their next three games. Virginia Tech, Campbell, Notre Dame. The Pack looking to get in the win column here. Probably a must-win game against the Hokies. I think it is because next week is two against Campbell. That back half of the schedule gets insanely tough with kicking off at Notre Dame. We'll talk a lot more about that as we get closer to the trip to South Bend. But right now, NC State is worried about the Hokies. That's it. Dave Doran 2-0 in his last two trips against Virginia Tech in 2022, winning by a point. MJ Morris doing the work. And then in 2023, Brennan Armstrong, after MJ Morris decided the red shirt, goes down to Blacksburg and gets a win. What happens this week? We'll find out. Be sure you're tuned in. Sunday, we'll have our post-game pod up, breaking down everything that happened, giving out game balls, and just figuring out what happened between NC State and Virginia Tech. But for now, I appreciate you for listening. If you're listening wherever you get your podcast, you can also watch us on YouTube as well. Every podcast available both digitally and visually. With that, we'll see you on Sunday.